I call the meeting to order. We are still in full holiday swing here. I will start with a roll call of the members. Steve Whitman, Bonnie Sears, myself, Rebecca Hanson, John Ranlett, Chris Buckley, Marianne Barnsley, and Brian Murphy. It's 2 meetings in a row. I haven't messed up anyone's name. Bridget Powers is not with us this evening. We'll start off with a review and Jack's not here either. We'll review the minutes from our meeting on December 20th. I have a few edits. If everyone doesn't mind, I'll just jump right into those. The first is on the first page under the first number 1 in the review of minutes. About halfway down in the paragraph after the 4,000 versus 70,000 feet. It says the increase in pervious surfaces. I believe that should be
Right.
impervious surfaces. And the next is, and maybe the minutes always read like this, but in reading through this, on the second page where we're asking questions of the, this is the virtual reality applicant, there's a lot of back and forth about question and then answer. And I just want to make sure everyone thinks that we have, if there's enough detail there that indicates that the applicant is responding to all the questions that we're asking. So I don't know if each one we need to have the applicant replied or responded or something like that, just to make it a little more clear. The one that kind of caught my eye was number 5 at the last 2 sentences. As Bridget voiced concern that young children could have access to violent images. We need to prevent a young child from playing anything that's a mature rating. This kink will be worked out before opening. And that's what kind of caught my eye. And then I looked through the rest of them and they're like that. So,
Right.
Does that make sense?
I mean, it'd be pretty simple just to put response by applicant
Yep.
ahead of that.
Yep. And again, I don't know if this is something, I think we were just peppering him with a lot of questions and there was
Right.
less discussion, so it stood out.
Yeah, but it isn't clear who was.
Yeah.
I had one on page 2, bullet 4 at the top, where it starts with Bonnie's name.
Yeah,
I'm guessing it would be Bonnie Sears asked.
yeah,
Yep.
that's what I had that marked. I said, yeah, that makes more sense, I guess.
Just missing.
Yeah.
Is that what Bonnie asked? What is this project? Because that's
I did, yeah, I said, I had no idea. I'm like, I don't even know what you're doing here. You know?
Clue me in.
Oh, God, yeah.
Before I jump in, my last edits are on the last page. Does anyone else have any edits on page 1 or 2?
Just on page 1 at the last bullet, number 1, yogurt is spelled wrong. I know how to spell ice cream, but just saying. Yogurt.
Oh, we discussed this, didn't we? The yogurt.
I think they're both acceptable.
All right, I stand corrected. Disagree.
I wasn't at the meeting, but I thought on page 3 that Rebecca Hanson was very happy to close the public hearing with the festive gavel. That was nice. I like that.
Yeah.
And
enjoyed that
I
as
was
well.
asked if that was okay to be included.
Yeah.
And I said they love that stuff.
I told-
So,
Oh, yeah.
It
Exactly.
makes me read the minutes more closely.
That's
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
True. A little bit of humor.
Looking for the Easter eggs in there.
Any other edits on page 3?
Do we need to note why Jack was asked to abstain from voting?
I think
Or is
so.
it self-explanatory?
Well, I think it would be easy just to tack, because
As he spoke in
yeah.
favor as public, I put
Yep.
just in my.
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah. My last comment or edit was on the last page under unfinished / other business, the second bullet. It says Rebecca Hanson stated that the zoning ordinance language is being tightened up by the town attorney in the site plan review regulations and subdivision regulations, along with the addition of a definition. I think that's about the wetlands in the zoning ordinance. be nice if the town attorney
Yeah,
tightened up our
is that-
zoning or entire zoning ordinance, but,
If I recall correctly, you had asked if he was going to vet the amendments.
okay. So the zoning ordinance amendments
Will be.
will be, yep, tightened up by the town attorney. And then the site plan reg and subdivision reg, I don't think that needs to be in there. Maybe that's what's,
It's actually backwards. I think along with the addition of a definition for wetlands in the site plan review regulations is suggested.
all right, that makes sense to me. Other edits? It's a lot of edits to the minutes. Are we good to approve them as amended, or do we want to see another draft? I'm good to go with this.
Then go with
trust
the
her.
amendment.
Okay.
I would move that we accept the minutes as amended.
I'll second it.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right, next up, administrative matters. The board will discuss topics for the year, including zoning amendments and bylaws. All right, when last we were here, we were talking about the wetlands, and Steve, maybe you saw some of this, the emails about this, but just to fill you in that, because of the, a specific, for this, the Fairgrounds Road,
Yes.
that subdivision, the town attorney looked at both our our zoning, subdivision, and site plan review, right? Am I getting this right? And just found where we could be a little more clear about our intent as far as wetlands go. So his suggestions were, at the very least, to put some sort of definition of wetlands in our zoning ordinance. And in our site plan regs and subdivision, that you're just kind of sneaking in to get the zoning ordinance updated with a wetlands definition. The subdivision and site plan we can do with a public hearing, so. And so we asked members of the board, we didn't have it was kind of last minute, 2 weeks ago, so we asked everybody to look up some wetland definitions, or if they were so inspired. But we also, I went and pulled which I don't have printed, but I have on my phone, the definition of a wetland per state statute. Because at this point, it might be easiest just to default to what the state defines as a wetland. But Brian printed out, did anyone bring piles of wetlands definitions with them?
After the team.
Tons of it. Just gotta find it here.
I brought a wetland scientist, totally not, that's coincidence. That wasn't the purpose, but if we need
Yep.
further, we do have one here.
Yeah, the RSA wasn't noted in that. That was off the DES
Yeah,
website.
and it's a little, it's more clear, the one thing I really like about the DES, from their FAQ, it looks like, is it does mention vernal pools. What I have from the state, statute is wetlands means an area that is inundated or saturated by surface water or groundwater at a frequency and duration sufficient to support, and that under normal conditions does support a prevalence of vegetation typically adapted for life in saturated soil conditions. So, I'd say so that's specifically what the RSA says.
Okay.
So, it doesn't mention vernal pools though, which sometimes, and since we do have a wetland scientist here, vernal pools can sometimes not have the vegetation or the soils, but they are indeed wetlands. Did I get that? Does that sound right, Grace?
Well, vernal pools are a type of wetland.
Right.
We do have those parameters,
Mhm.
At least part of the year.
Okay,
And if that helps.
thank you. So does anyone have any opinion, suggestions for what we should include as a definition in our zoning ordinance?
The easiest, and going forward, in case there's anything added to the definition at the state level, rather than readopting that definition, would be adopted by reference as far as, town of Plymouth considers that a wetland meets the state criteria under RSA whatever, and by reference. So anytime in the future when that's updated, we don't have to change our zoning ordinance to reflect it.
Which is exactly what Holderness did now that I look at.
Which I like, because you don't have to just go find it to find it
Right,
out.
right.
It gives you an overview of what a wetland is, and
Right.
then
Yeah.
says,
Right.
but also check here.
Yeah.
We put the current definition in the zoning ordinance for our work, for, at least for the zoning board stuff. And vernal pools can be added to the planning board stuff at public session in the subdivision and site plan regs.
Yeah, so I guess we could just adopt the exact language from Holderness because that's the exact language from the RSA.
What RSA is that, Rebecca?
482-A:2, Roman numeral.
It has it on the paper.
Yeah, do you have this?
Oh, yeah, right here.
Okay.
At the very
Yeah,
end of that.
I wrote
Yeah.
that. I just didn't bring it with me.
You want it?
No, if I
you
have
got
all
it,
that
you
stuff
got it.
here, that's.
All right.
I can
'cause-
email you what I pulled, but it's exactly the same. so.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll add that definition to our zoning ordinance, and then we need to review the remaining suggested amendments. And so we have agreed to, and we probably need to put this as well, that we're going to strike the definition of, are we gonna strike one definition?
Yeah, I forgot which one it
Outdoor
was.
rec, indoor rec.
Yes,
Yep.
in whatever they were combined as. I think it was combined under the outdoor, we can, because I do believe that it's defined elsewhere in there. But if it was just that one line in the table of uses that
table.
didn't
Oh,
make
right,
sense.
yep,
So to scratch that,
yep. So we need to make sure that's included in the list of everything. So the removal from the table of uses and then oh no, it's in the, what I'm thinking about is the manufacture of goods sold
Oh,
on
right.
premises. Can't forget about that.
Oh, yeah, right.
So we're
That was
striking
important.
that as a use.
and the thought behind that was that it would come to this board anyway.
Right.
Okay.
And in reality, what's happening is there's a number of places that are ending up where they are not getting caught by that use anyway. That it's such a kind of an odd thing that we're just not catching it, so I feel like there's a number of things that maybe we should have been considering that. So. So it's basically adjusting the table of use for that and then the definitions of indoor and outdoor recreation. And then these
Well,
two.
both are defined in the ordinance.
Yep.
It's just that they were mistakenly combined on that
Yep.
one particular
Okay,
line.
so we're moving the
When it's
word-
clearly outdoor
Okay,
is
okay.
what they're talking
Right.
about.
I just want to make sure we've got kind of the bulleted list, so.
Yes.
So we've got two definition, right, two definition.
Right.
Getting this correct, and then a table of use change. And then two amendments for Article 4, Section 401.
Which is what?
That's this sheet here.
Got it.
Yeah. And have these gone to the attorney yet?
No,
Okay.
it wouldn't really serve to go to the attorney before the public hearing.
Okay, gotcha,
Because then he's just vetting for them for legality at that point.
I see.
And Steve, I lost the redlined track changes thing you had for more than one main structure.
Yeah.
Basically, we're just going to strike any number in there, right? Okay, and that's,
Yeah,
I
I
think,
think that's-
reflected on the printout I gave you guys.
I think so.
The only thing that I maybe would suggest, and this maybe is not something, it's not language, but when we, just in case the figure doesn't end up on the same page as the language, to make sure that it references wherever that
Absolutely.
is. So,
So this here is the cluster commercial thing they're talking about, so that they can have multiple
this is allowing multiple
Yes.
structures
on one piece of land.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
In commercial applications only.
right. Yeah. I think that's an important one.
So do those all sound good? All right, and so our first public hearing is, I have this written down somewhere.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Rebecca, on, the back of that, about the manufacturer of goods and
Oh, I
services,
didn't see that on there, because that was already on there.
because it sounds like we have to make a decision.
Oh.
We either have to define noxious manufacturing as not allowed, or define permitted goods. Have we decided which of those?
I thought we had decided to strike that entire use from the table.
Right, because there would have been a huge list.
cleaner.
If
Okay.
either one way or the other.
Yep. Sorry, Brian, I didn't see that that was on the back sheet.
That was just left on from after the discussion last time. This was one I sent out way prior.
So for our next public hearing, we can finalize all this. I think the only thing we need to do is write that we're gonna remove the manufacture of goods and then that's the table of uses, and then the definition of indoor or outdoor recreation, whichever
Right,
needs to be
there's
fixed.
4 points that we'll
Yeah.
be looking at.
And then that's it. Do you need us to take care of that, or can you add those things to this so we're ready to go and just to finalize everything before?
No, I'll actually add them in,
Okay,
and maybe just another sheet, but give you the final language on these.
okay,
And I'll print out what the actual definition is for that.
okay.
And the other ones are pretty simple. So actually, the only things that we're adding are the wetland definition plus those 3,
Yep,
or 2.
Right.
There's 2 strikes now.
yep,
There should be 5 items in total.
yep. Yep. We're still making the zoning ordinance longer, though.
But it's clarifying it.
Yeah. No, I think this is all good.
So when's the public hearing?
Oh, yeah, that's what we're gonna.
I've got down here the 17th.
It's our
I
next
wrote
meeting.
that in, is it?
I have the 17th as well, but Brian, you said that we have more time than you thought.
The 17th is, okay. These things are kind of going backward.
I started to write everything down.
Monday, so the 17th, unless we schedule another meeting for that month, of this month, would, to be on the 24th, would be the 17th, would be the yeah, we're kind of compressed with weekends and stuff in there. The 21st of January is the last day to hold the first public hearing.
Okay, so we have to do it on the
So
17th.
we have to do it on the 17th.
Okay. So that means we need to determine that the language is finalized enough tonight,
Yes.
which I think I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think you pretty much did. I mean, the heavy lifting was in the text of the amendments. The other ones is pretty quick.
Yep.
So I can have those ready, I'll put them out to the board. Again, return all comments to me, and then I'll bring them up at that.
Okay. And then we still have time, obviously, we have to have time to post it.
Yes, which means probably need to put it out tomorrow.
Okay.
It's 10 days for public hearings, right, Steve?
That sounds right.
So yeah, either the 7th or, yeah, I can get it in for the 7th, so that'd be one.
10 business days or 10 days?
This is,
Let's hope it's 10 days.
It's day days.
By doing it on the 17th, we have a little extra time. We have a little less time, right?
Yeah, a little less.
Right.
I mean, it's because of the day of the week that this falls on, the publication schedule for the Record Enterprise. This is why we use the Laconia Sun almost exclusively for planning board, is because our deadline dates don't leave enough time to get it in the paper properly. You know, just counting back, and we do it every time and say, no, we can't do it that way. I mean, and folks clamor for it, but the only other way to do it would be to publish immediately on the date when everything comes in, and chances are, you know, we're waiting to accumulate it at that point, so we're not ready to go to print.
So there is enough time. We don't have to come and have an emergency meeting on Martin Luther King Day.
No. Though, yeah, no, that would have to be it. So it'll have to be on the 17th if we're going to do it this year.
All right. Are we all good with the zoning amendments?
Yeah, I just think that they're not especially exciting zoning amendments, so people are not going to be paying attention because they're mostly administrative. We're making things better or clearing things up, but we might have to maybe collectively make a push after the hearing and ahead of town meeting, ahead of the vote, to get people to understand what's happening, why we did this. Just maybe even talking about them as a batch, and I'm sure you talk about them at the select board meeting as you're talking about things that are coming up, but maybe there's something we can even do, whether it's in the Record Enterprise or there and on the website.
Oddly enough, the biggest thing that you can do, and it's kind of a default action, is that the planning board recommends.
Right.
And
Still
since it's originated here,
Yeah.
if you don't recommend it,
We get some other issues,
get some
yeah.
other planning board members.
I definitely think that'll help, but I think
It does,
maybe
but
just getting the
also,
word out.
we'll be putting it up on PB Cam,
Good.
and, though I
We could
shouldn't call
probably
it
do a
that
press
anymore.
release that's just like, okay, we're just taking care of some administrative matters before we start tackling the update of the implementation for the master
Sure.
plan, where we start looking at, how our zoning ordinance is in adherence to what we want today in Plymouth, so,
It's all calendar driven.
yeah. So I think,
Maybe you could do that when you head up the public notice, master plan, work or amendments,
Yeah.
and zoning to clear up some of the things.
Yeah, I would keep it as simple as we can, just so
Yeah.
people don't think that we're trying to do something
yeah,
that they
We had some
know that we're just
complicated-
administrative changes.
Years ago, we did all kinds of presentations. We had
Yep.
panel boards in the lobby, and, but they weren't as, these are administrative, like you
I
said.
think just getting the word to spread that they're administrative,
do you
nothing.
think a press release would be a good idea?
Yeah, something
If
simple.
I write something pretty simple, would you be able to just?
Yeah, I'd
prove
work
that?
on it with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when we had more complex ones, you and Frank went on television and
Right.
did the.
Frank will get the word out,
Yeah, Frank.
town
starts-
crier.
There you go. Oh, you can have your own stamp.
If
So
you're gonna
this-
be the public, we're gonna have to call you Joe, though.
So this will be, when people go to vote in March, is this when they're gonna vote whether they want this done or not? Now, I know when I go and I read something like that, and they say it's, like, section whatever, blah, 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 all these numbers, it's like,
Right.
well, I have no idea what they're talking. If there could be a simple little thing underneath just to say, just to explain it, like, okay, instead of just if you got, say, 30 acres of land that you want to develop for commercial, this is going to mean that there could be more than one or two commercial buildings on that one lot.
But even the measure on the ballot is dumbed down a little bit. It's a lot broader than the nuts and bolts. So sometimes they'll put in, the RSA's and all the back
Yeah.
referencing. Other times, like when we adopted the state building code, it involved chapters and chapters of stuff in the ordinance, but on the ballot measure was just, are you in favor of adopting the enforcement powers of the state building code? And that's where we had the other stuff as backdrop. But yeah, I mean, you know, the clerk's office likes to keep it short, because they gotta deal with that.
Yeah, that's why I said just a simple
But,
explanation.
yeah, I mean, and that is, it doesn't have to be the verbatim, but it has to be very clear about it.
Will
So,
we get a chance to see what they draft to address Bonnie's concern?
oh, yeah,
Because that might just help, because I think,
Well, I know when I go to vote and I
Probably.
see something and I read over it about 3 times and I go, I don't know exactly what this means, and maybe it's something I really don't want.
Yeah.
so what's your tendency, right?
I don't vote at all.
Right.
I just leave it blank, and I know I'm not the only
And
one.
other people vote no.
Can we,
Yeah, and it might be something you really want.
Right.
and we can certainly put information boards up in the lobby outside of the thing.
who writes
Just
the,
explaining to
who
them.
writes the more simplified language?
I think we all do.
Okay.
I think the last time we did it was, well, we do run that through the attorney, because I guess there's certain
Yep.
steps you have to have in there.
Can
But,
we run it through Bonnie as well to see?
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you want to help me write it, I'd be more than happy to help
Yeah,
you.
hey, if I can understand it, anybody will be able to understand.
I think you're hitting on the same point that I am, that people aren't paying attention. We do our best to tell them, but then they get there and they don't understand it. I think the simplified language may address it.
If you're not involved with it, why would you?
Right.
Why would you?
Right.
You're too busy to, nobody can do
I
that.
don't think people read our zoning ordinance for fun.
Well, maybe, you know,
Like the way
maybe
they
in the
watch the
wintertime they
meetings.
might.
Nothing better to do.
I couldn't even talk my kids into watching this meeting tonight.
Wow, they didn't want to see you on the screen?
No,
Maybe they're watching, so be careful.
Yeah, there
no,
you
they
go.
did pick up something off of Facebook with the, at the approval of the market basket, when there was a bit of applause. They showed, and said, hey, we saw it on TV. Of course, it's always this side.
I have a teacher from high school who I ran into recently. He's like, I saw you on television. He doesn't-
You want my autograph?
Yeah, right? He does not live in Plymouth either, so, anyway,
Well, it's big regional news.
yeah. I mean, it's the first applause I've heard at planning board meeting, I think, so.
The night is young.
Yep. We can set a high bar here. Applause at the end, please. Okay, so we're good with the zoning. And I will work on the press release. I don't think is really important until maybe closer to the end of February.
Yeah.
But as we craft that language, we can help to just make it as understandable as possible. And I think Bonnie, you'd be a good filter for that, so.
Okay.
Are they gonna put this on the town website too?
Yes,
Yeah,
and we'll have them
that's another
specifically
thing.
state
But
that
again,
these are
some people
amendments
don't
for
get-
the
Right.
zoning and the.
You
Don't
don't think
have
of
a
it till you get in there
computer.
and you're in the voting booth and you go,
Yep.
Yep. Great. All right. Should have asked this a while ago. Grace, did you have something specific to address with the planning board since we're making you sit through everything?
I'm just observing.
Okay, all right.
process.
I don't like to make guests sit through all the administrative fun. But if you're here for the administrative fun, then that's great, so. Okay, so I had a big idea of doing a yearly master plan or strategic plan for the planning board. I'm struggling to get my act together with that. And, which I think is fine. I just wanted to look at each month as we have a work session. And I'd like to loosely plan out what we're going to address through the year. I think we've got some big zoning changes coming down, for next year, if we're following our master plan. But what I'm finding right now is I just feel like I need a little help figuring out all this stuff. It's too much of a burden for me. So I'd like to figure out how we can spread the work out amongst all of us and how to figure out the best way to tackle our master plan, which I think one of the things I would think we need to look at is I mean, I've heard this since I've been on the board, is the lot line, or the zoning, boundaries, the zone boundaries, what am I trying to say? the boundaries between our zones. So, and I've spoken a little bit to Steve about the best way to do this. I don't
We
know.
actually, I'm on a board at Haven Pregnancy, and we have a strategic plan, and it's just broken out by months and little blocks, and I can get the format, and, everybody just writes that in, bring it to the meeting, and you add that in,
Okay.
and then Brian can do some of the stuff too, based on,
I think he's gonna do all of the stuff, right?
yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I just want to think about how we're going to tackle our master plan and how we're going to, and then thinking about big zoning changes. And is that something, I mean, if that's what we want to tackle for this coming up, then maybe that's the only thing we work on aside from, so a big zoning change, which I think potentially could take a good portion of the year to try and figure out. The other thing I just want to think about is maybe I had big plans of breaking up all the recommendation tables by different responsibilities and timeframes, but I think that might be something if we can all tackle, like, okay, since Chris, you're on the Conservation Commission, maybe you can pull out everything that the Conservation Commission is on and just bring that to them and show them that. So
I'd keep it simpler.
Okay,
Um,
thank you.
Well, so we do a lot of these for towns, and a lot of times we call it, and we did one for Plymouth at one point, just as a class, when Mike Ahern was the planning board chair, and he came to class, and then we just did it internally, because there wasn't interest, I think, in having one done publicly at the time, but we call it a regulatory audit, and basically, you read the master plan, and you say, okay, this is what we say in the master plan, and then you read the zoning and say, will these zoning regulations help us get here? It's kind of that simple. So I would not worry too much about lots of details and definitions and stuff that we have in the existing zoning, aside from starting with the districts. And so in the districts, especially, there's a big difference between our primarily commercial districts and our primarily residential districts, and I think that's what the master plan points out. So in the places where we have development, and we want to see more development, and we have water and sewer access and those types of things, what would we do different? And I think to have the board asking those questions, what would we do different? What are you concerned about that you want to make sure is addressed? How do other places handle this? And then we can go out, all of us can go out and look at examples. I have some students I'll be working with through the spring that as things come up, I can also task them with some of the research. So they can bring to you examples here from New Hampshire, or if you're aware of things that have happened elsewhere and you want us to go in and grab that section of the zoning regulation, we could do that. But just starting to look at that kind of future land use, future development map in the master plan, and have some discussions with section of the master plan that talks about whatever given area of the town in a section of our existing zoning. Could we have more density in some of these places on Tenny Mountain Highway? Could you have more density in the downtown? Are there other development areas that haven't received a lot of attention because it seems like development gets spread out? Having those kind of big 30,000 foot discussions early in the year, I think will help all of us decide where do we want to work, where do we want to focus, what do you think is politically palatable, start to float ideas, get people to give feedback before we write anything. So that's just some initial thoughts.
No, I think that's great.
Would it help to, I mean, if I was faced with, like, here's this master plan, and if it was up to me, I think the short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals, it would be nice to sort of parse those out in some way, because I think those short-term goals are obviously things that we need to get on.
Right.
And then it would be nice to know, like, the longer-term goals that we need to be working on year by year over the next 10 years. So we have a plan of how we're, like, if it's a long-term goal, how we're going to get there in 10 years. And there's a ton in there, which is why I think it's important to also delegate to the different committees. But there's a lot of stuff just for the planning board that we should be looking at. And somehow, I know if it was just me, I would need to get a handle on, all right, what things are short-term that we need to get taken care of sooner to make sure those aren't sort of forgotten about. Because that seems like, and I know with the Conservation Commission, I think that master plan was sort of put away somewhere and never looked at, and so a lot of that stuff never got changed. So.
Right.
It's looked at when we start rewriting it again, you know? And why didn't we do something?
Right.
And on 2 boards that went through that, so.
So maybe all of us individually can kind of go through the master plan and, because I don't know if there's like a computer program that could break that stuff out, here's short term, here's long term, but, you know, and we could have a discussion about what we each individually think should be prioritized and what we can't forget about.
I think both what I was suggesting, what you're suggesting work together. And they could be parallel. Sometimes we could be talking about the same stuff. But I think knowing that we have these work sessions and, you know, deciding ahead of a work session, I'm happy to bring ideas. They're only ideas. And of course, all of you have the right to say, no, we don't want to focus on that, or we want to focus on something bigger or smaller or whatever. And at the same time, maybe we go and look for any relevant short-term and even medium-term, you know, recommendations that we just wrote.
It'd be nice to find like low-hanging fruit, you know,
Yeah.
things that, oh, we can just take care of it and just get a whole bunch of things just taken care of. So maybe,
And some of those will be easier to do after we decide if we're going to change any of the zoning districts and how. You might decide some of them work the way they are, and you want to keep them that way.
So is short-term the low-hanging fruit, or is short-term what we need to do immediately or within a?
It's more of a time frame. I don't know if there's that much that's really anything that's low hanging fruit in the recommendation list. There's, but there are stuff that we determine that these are of importance or reasonable to do within a short term, which I think we said like 1 year to 2 years. So, and then medium term, I think is 3 to 5. I think is what we said, and then
Yeah, that sounds right.
yeah. Okay. So it sounds like it would be helpful to mold all those tables at least so we can change the time frame. And then, I mean, that's something that you would like. I mean, it's really just copying it into Excel. It's tedious. But,
maybe we should see what we can, like, I think, as a board, maybe we should all agree as up to our abilities, our outside responsibilities, to go through the master plan and try to pull out things that we think need to be addressed and would either be easy to be addressed or, you know, politically palatable, whatever the criteria is. So, you know, we can present those at a work session.
From the actions.
From the, you know, I think we all need to go through that master plan again. There's so much stuff in there.
So go through and just highlight the items that you think are most
Yeah.
important, especially short-term ones.
But isn't saying the short-term ones, aren't you already deciding, you know, the level of importance? So why would you go through the other levels and not just focus on the ones?
I think some of it is just the amount of time it's going to take to do some of this stuff. So, it's just because it's a long term doesn't mean we don't start tomorrow. It just means it
Might
might
have
take.
to start tomorrow.
Right.
And short-term goals might be taken care of by something happening in the longer term, if that came up first, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
It might be subsumed into that, so we could actually check 2 boxes instead of 1 at the time.
The way that table is set up right now with the actions that you're looking at, Rebecca, we never gave ourselves like a blank column, like to make notes, right?
No, but.
So I'm thinking if we were to copy and take the time to copy and paste into Excel, we should add a column for like planning board notes.
Yep.
So that as we go through, if there's anything that's in the minutes, we can make a record of it and
Okay.
give a copy to Brian, or just so that as people on the board change or whatever, we can go back and have one record of the work, at least the working side of it.
Okay, so this is the one thing that I can commit to doing before our next, I guess our work session's further away now. But I can get all the tables into, I'm probably gonna put them in an Excel format
Right.
with an extra comments column. And I can do that before the next meeting, and that's,
So, I read the master plan, it's amazing, you guys did a lot of work on it. And as just a public member, can the public help with moving the short and longer and medium efforts forward? And that'd be one question. If it's yes, then how does the public get involved? Like, I know you're talking about getting your students involved, some of those aspects may be more research-based, but
Right.
we need to ask them. So it's still, I mean, it's the master plan, so it's a planning board driven process, so we need to be making sure we're connecting with the people that we can, to reach out and help, ask for help, so.
It's an excellent idea, though, and working with other communities that the planning board has too much on their plate just reviewing applications. Other communities do it.
Yeah.
And sometimes those members of the public come to the planning board meeting, so everyone's in the same room and you're having the same conversation. But then if there are things like doing what you're gonna do with the table, steering committee members,
Yeah.
or however we wanna call them, can do some of those things and come back. It would be an opportunity to engage a little bit broader group, people that maybe aren't fans of zoning, either the existing or what they think is gonna come. Get them involved in helping us go through the exercise.
I think that's great, and maybe as part of this press release, we can say, we could build a core of planning board volunteers that,
Right.
yeah.
Do you think it might be advantageous to, say, if, after the next couple of weeks and we get a better grip on what's going on and how this process is gonna work, but say, if we knew in advance that the April meeting, we would be covering certain chapters of implementation, invite the public, give a little, like a preview of coming attractions at the preceding board, saying, we're gonna be looking at this, that you will have an effect on blah, blah, blah. If you have anything to say, as we're going through this, please come in, we're, welcome all input.
I like that a lot, I think that's
Great
great.
idea.
So we can have it's like some sort of marquee, and not an actual marquee, that's like, coming soon, we're gonna be working on this.
Right, but, at least it'll give people who are in the audience, the buzzword floats by and they catch it and they, okay, I'll go to that meeting next week.
That's a good idea. I think the more we can do to talk about it, let people know we're gonna be working on it, that way when we can float ideas and get people to come in and tell us, are we on the right track, or are we not? Because you hate to work on it for a year and have it go to, if it results in any major changes, I guess, you hate to just see it get shot down because nobody was tuned in.
Right,
And lots of times, just because they don't understand,
Right.
shoot it down.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if there were, like you say, a broader group of participation,
Right.
there's a lot of people out there that have a lot of knowledge, and they don't get involved in it, so sometimes they say because they're not asked, so
Right.
invite them.
And I mean, ideally, we could end up with a document that Brian and others have to work with on a daily basis that's easier to navigate through, easier to make changes to whenever changes come up, a little bit more, user-friendly. Because we have kind of a traditional zoning ordinance
If
now.
it's not arcane, what's the point in government?
Right. Confuse them, scare them off.
Right.
and wouldn't it be nice 10 years from now when they're updating the master, I say they, like it's not gonna be us, updating the master plan, and, because I know when we went through all the recommendations from the last one, and we're like, I don't know if we've done that, but we can say decidedly, like, that was done, and this is when it was done, and this is how we did it.
Yeah, the next master plan is like just 2 pages long
Yeah.
or something.
This place is perfect, keep it that
Done.
way, yeah.
That would be great.
Okay, so the only thing I'm gonna commit to then is, because it's gonna be time consuming, is readjusting these tables to not in the master plan themselves, but in a working document that we can all use, so. And then everybody else, it sounds like we need to dig back into this, our lovely document here. Is there, everyone has a copy or access to a copy?
Yeah, I have a digital copy.
And I'll get it on the agenda for the next Conservation Commission meeting, that we should start utilizing the master plan
Yep.
in our meetings, and make sure everyone somehow gets a copy. They're online, and could they print them off online if they needed to, or, yeah, so,
It's
on the website.
in a PDF, which is easier to print, so.
Okay. And it's on the website right now.
Right now.
I saw it today. I didn't see the data book on there, though. Oh, I was supposed to get that to you.
Yeah. Wasn't me.
Oh, it's right here. It says it right here. someone's date of birth. Okay, so I just want to make sure we're planning our discussion ahead, so we know what we're talking about. Steve, are you here at the next work session?
That is the beginning of February, yes. 7th, 8th, something. I
yeah.
just checked and I'm here.
Okay, I won't be here the first meeting in March, so, we just want to keep that in mind.
When is that?
That's the 7th as well.
Oh, okay.
So Steve, will you be able to help sort of guide us through some next steps and a few discussion points?
Yeah, I was just looking back at the zoning for a second. I would be happy to try to keep it brief, to not jump into, my fear is to jump in too deep and then we miss. I want to make sure everyone's engaged like throughout the process, and if we get to a place where we disagree, we can talk about it and change direction or whatever, but I would like for myself, and I'm happy to see if I can create a handout to go through and look at this zoning ordinance and look at what we said in the master plan and just try to show where there are any strong correlation between what's in here and what's in the master plan, or where there's a real disconnect, and just highlight it so we can talk about it. You know, we don't have like purpose statements and things like that for these districts. We don't really talk about the intent, and so I won't want to stretch my interpretation. I'll try to keep it just to whatever facts I can pull from this, but then we can talk about how we want to interpret it together. If we think that there are things that are in the existing zoning that make it really strong and flexible and user-friendly or whatever, or attract development or any of the qualities that maybe we see in it, or we think that there are things that are unclear, or this is our chance to fix that.
Great.
So I'll work on that.
Okay. So everyone dig into the master plan. And I can send a reminder email out, or just a follow-up email. Everybody, and include Jack and Bridget as well.
I just think it's great that we're getting started right at the beginning of the year, because it will take time. You saw how much the master plan took.
Setting dangerous precedents here.
So how do we want to handle Grace's point about involving the public? When would we won't be putting out that press release till after that
Right.
first. So we want to have this first work session, just have it on the agenda and welcome anyone that wants to come, and then maybe make a more
Yeah,
direct effort to get people.
we don't notice work sessions, right?
No, but we can always put that the work sessions, unless otherwise noted, are going to be specific topics related to the master plan implementation, to let people know. And,
Yeah.
Again, just because it's a work session doesn't mean you can't come and
Right.
Right.
give input to it. It's just that there's no particular case that
Right.
you're looking at. So, yeah, a lot of people think that though they watch these sessions, and they should have an understanding of what transpires, they figure it's either really, none of their business because it's administrative matters.
Yep.
Where, the roundtable we're having now would probably pique a lot of interest in the community had they been aware that, these questions would be coming up. So if they know that there are topics to be discussed, if we can get that far ahead of ourselves,
Yeah.
that's going to bring in even more people,
Yeah.
I would think.
Right.
But just
Even
in general
more.
terms, and a welcoming thing might work too.
Is this still the best zoning map we have?
Yes. Well, we have one in color.
A version, it's very similar to this?
Yeah, it's exactly that, but the things are colored.
Is it on the website?
It was supposed to have been, but I can get it to you. You want a copy?
Yeah, it'd be great.
Okay.
I just think it'll be helpful for us to have when because I don't often know where the boundaries are to these districts. And then we have this other map in the master plan that I want to compare to.
I'll email that to all the members.
That'd be great. Thanks, Brian.
You're talking about this one here.
No, the one on the page before it. That one's for the airport zoning. Yeah, that one there.
Sometimes these maps are like, I have no idea what they're doing.
Like Greek?
Yeah.
It
That would be
is,
something that we can add to just produce some sort of
yeah.
legible.
It makes me think of when I was younger and riding with my dad, and he hands me the map, and he says, because he's driving along, he says, get me, which road do I need to take to get to wherever? And I looked at this map, at all these lines, and I said, you can't get there from here. And he goes, oh, and he pulled off the road and took the map. It didn't look like you could get anywhere.
No way.
Like, no.
The original of that map is only about that big anyway.
I
We do that
figured.
in older life, too.
You can't get there from here. Right. Okay.
Pull over the side of the road. I remember doing this when I was a kid.
So yeah, it sounds like we want to make our work sessions our most exciting meetings, not these public hearings. I mean, that's where the real work happens, really, so.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do wonder, sort of in response to what you asked, like how do we involve the public? Like, are there other ways to announce what you're doing and what you're working on? Like, I know I hate social media, but I think it's the way we get a lot of information really, instead of, I don't necessarily go onto the website, the town's website. I mean, do you have a Facebook page or other
think-
ways to get the word out?
I think the agenda comes out on the
Does it?
town network, doesn't it?
No, because they've usually posted, it's not a vital piece, so.
That
unless-
might be a way to do it, start putting the agenda out
Right,
there.
but, yeah.
So that people would know.
And more on the broad, that's where I was getting at with the other, having a topic that be discussed. We could certainly put that out the second that we come up with the schedule for that.
Yeah.
And let people know, but yeah, agendas would be good too.
I think our topic for our next work session is we are beginning to implement the master plan is the first steps in implementation, so.
And I think that sharing it in every platform is important. One of the first master plan meetings we had, when we had it down at the senior center, there were a couple of us that shared it via social media, and there were people at that meeting. It was it centered a little bit younger than typical, but there were people who were really interested in the process, and it was because they had seen it on social media.
It was a great turnout. And like, that's kind of what I'm thinking. You should fill the room with people who are like, all right, this is our town. And we have, we have kids we're, raising here, or we're investing. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is where my reasoning for coming tonight is to like figure out where the master plan's going, the one that's just adopted. So.
And even if they don't show up, if they know it's happening and people are talking about it, that's good. Somebody will be showing it.
I think we need a social media liaison.
Bonnie,
Yeah, me and Bonnie, we'll do it.
And it'll be very understandable.
And
So
I don't.
What's Facebook?
Oh,
We
yeah,
actually
that
have
will
a
work.
Facebook page?
no.
I don't know if creating a planning board Facebook page is necessarily the way to go. I'm not
Maybe
sure.
working with.
With it, yeah.
Yeah, that's
can-
certainly, PBTV has one.
Yep, if we could get them if we could provide them something that they could post a Facebook announcement that then those of us who are on could share.
I thought I saw that on one of the meetings, the select board meeting, and wasn't the agenda out on those? On the TV? Items to be discussed or something?
Oh, I
Okay, so it
rarely
sounds like
look at the
We would like to ask
Sorry.
PBTV to put it on their Facebook page and perhaps make some sort of TV screen thing. I don't know. I don't watch PBTV, so I'm not sure what because there's something that gets
Well,
screened.
they have what they call cards,
Okay.
which was typical announcement, it's like a slide.
Okay.
And, but then on Channel 20, you can always do public service stuff.
Okay.
So if any of you wanted to go on TV and speak to a specific point, they could put that into rotation.
Is it still channel 20? Because when they
I
spectrum
call it
change-
20, and I always call it 3.
Okay, because I know like it used
I
to.
don't even know what the number
remember
is. It's
channel
127011, I think.
It is 1301 for this one,
Oh, is it?
yeah. And the other one, I think, is 1302.
Probably right next to it, yeah.
I
It's on
remember.
YouTube, right? You can watch it on YouTube.
That's,
Or is that just from our
That-
website?
I think it's, well, they must upload to there just
Yeah, because you
de
can't,
rigueur.
those of us that don't have television can watch it online.
Yes.
It's the same thing, so.
But that all goes through at their level.
Okay.
I'd be happy to draft something. Do we want, I don't want to get us like talking via email and get us in trouble. So how we want to get this out, if I drafted something, I could send it to Brian to share for the 17th.
Mhm.
And then we could get it out after
This
that.
is for the,
For the February work session?
February the 7th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just to share that we're starting to do this, like
Yeah.
just to start getting the word out, to address Grace's point.
Yep.
I could draft something and send it just for you
Okay.
guys to help wordsmith.
That's great. And those people that do have social media, which might, sounds like it might be not very many of us. Yeah, I mean, I don't have a Facebook page anymore, so, yeah.
Look at the demographic.
It won't take much, it won't take much to share it and have it go
Yep.
well beyond our control, so that's
Chisel
fine. I'm happy to
hammer.
Okay.
push it out there.
Draft.
But it's nice if it's hosted on something that's a little bit more official, so if they're willing
Yes.
to host it, that's nice. Then people can go there. You can just tell them to go there.
Yep. And it sounds like, I don't want to be promising that the PBTV will be doing all this stuff for us, but it sounds like this is something that they're doing anyway to promote these things, so. All right.
Okay. Get on it.
Does everyone have enough homework, or should we continue talking so that
We
everyone's got
come
more
up
to
with more
do in the
stuff.
next 2 weeks?
Would you like to have a rep from PBTV speak to the capabilities of it?
I mean,
I'm not gonna
Yeah.
drag Andrew out of the booth. I'm just saying that, you know, if you have, because it seems like none of us really understand what they can do for us.
Yeah.
Jules, I think, would be more than happy to explain
yeah.
to you guys what can be done.
Yeah, I guess what I'm worried about overburdening anybody, us, staff. And so I think that's what we're, why we're like, we don't know what to do, because we're trying to, it'd be great to have volunteers, but how are we going to manage them? Who are they going to contact? And trying to make sure that we're not over-promising and under-delivering. We're, over-promising and over-delivering, but trying to make a good system so that we can figure out how to best do this. So, because everybody here but is a volunteer except for Brian, and Brian's got plenty to do. So, and we just keep giving him more and more to do. So,
Shoulders slumped.
yeah. So just trying to make sure that we're continuing to move forward, but not making anyone go crazy or crazier. So, yeah. But I mean, do we want to hear what PBTV can do, or can we? I don't want to make someone come.
I mean,
down and
it could come in further down the line once we get
Yeah.
at least a bare bones
Yeah.
idea of how we're gonna proceed here. But that would be something, and, whatever is available. I mean, I'm like many others, I don't do any social media, so I don't know all the capabilities of it, or even how many there are for that matter. But I know that, there's certain people that follow, and if people are posting planning board meetings, cheering,
Yeah.
then there's gotta be a market for it out there.
They're already doing it. I mean, they're doing a nice job getting the word out. I think that part's easy. I think the part that's harder is if at some point we get further down the road and we have ideas of what we think should happen. Maybe it's a couple of planning board members or a planning board member and a member from the public who's been involved, like doing one of those sit-down talking sessions.
Right.
I think to be able to explain it,
Yeah.
is really helpful.
Yep.
And then people can kind of say, oh, maybe I will go to one of those work sessions. Or, no,
Yep.
those people are professional. They really get it under control.
They clearly haven't watched any of our meetings.
I'll vote.
Until they come to a meeting.
Yeah. All right. So it sounds like we're good for our first I guess we are implementing the master plan right now, so our
Exciting.
second implementation session. First Thursday of every month. Implementation party.
So you want us to look through this again and see what you think we want to start to do that's in here?
Yeah, I mean, I think our heart should be beating master plan at this point, but yeah, just, I think, look through it, because I think it's been a while, a few months since a lot of us have looked at it, but, especially since we've looked at a little more of the zoning ordinance, but, anything specific, Steve, that you think would be helpful to?
Well, I'm looking at the page that Bonnie's on right now. This one here. So there's the zoning district, a color zoning district map.
Sure. I could do this all night. I'll flip the page.
So the zoning district map is on page 19. But then there's another map that kind of looks to the future. And that's on page 38. So like one of the things I'm interested in is just like, how does page 19 match with page 38? And what can we do to get those closer?
Together.
Yeah, and I think, I'll be fully transparent. You can disagree with me all you want. I sometimes get a vote. I don't even always get a vote, right? So I'm doing this because I'm interested. But I think the master plan did a nice job talking about the fact that we have some areas that could take a lot more dense development. If it's designed well, you could have more density of development in areas that already have development. You could have more mix of use in those areas. You have access to transportation, you have access to infrastructure. So people who are in a pro-development mindset and would like to see that tax revenue, I think we could speak to that and show a way forward. But that also means taking some of the pressure off places that have sensitive resources. There has to be a trading, and we can get both. I don't know exactly how we'll do that, and I think that's what we have to grapple with and get people involved in.
I think that the zoning thing that we want to change as far as the cluster commercial,
Yeah.
to have everything right there makes a lot of sense to me.
Right.
But I think
that's
it
a
would be
start.
helpful to go through the master plan as a planning, using it as a tool as opposed to a document that we need to edit. Because
Exactly.
So I think we've spent a lot of time trying to make it the best master plan we can, but now we need to actually read it and absorb it instead of edit it.
As a set of instructions as opposed to something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And feel free, like, as you go through, if you notice something, feel free to highlight questions, like, how would we do this? What communities have done this? And we have those examples. And so we could do some really good stuff, and we could keep it user-friendly. It won't be short. It'll, just like what we have now, there'll be enough background that people can actually know what they're doing. But I think we could do a good job. And some of the research stuff that, based on questions you all have, those are questions that members of the public are going to have and people at home are going to have. So I'm happy. It's great for my students to help work on some of that research and bring examples forward. So we can leverage that like we did with the master plan. And then we can decide with those examples, if they're helpful, what to do with them.
It sounds like, too, that if you encounter students, like we worked with Polly last year, and he basically designed our master plan, but
Right.
if there's any students that need extra, that want to get more involved, we can certainly,
Yeah, it's a possibility.
yeah, so. Or Reagan, who did all that editing.
Yeah, after she graduated.
Yeah.
And Greg DeSanto lives and works nearby. He doesn't work with North Country Council anymore, but if we need any simple maps to help communicate any of our ideas and they're different from what's in there, I'm sure we could figure that out.
Yeah, he's supplying maps to the Conservation Commission right now at our request.
Oh,
So,
good.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I think we did get all the shape files for the maps as well.
Do you have the ability to make changes?
I can, but I'm not very efficient at it, so.
Okay. But that might be another place, if we talk to somebody, that might be another student type project where
Yep.
they could help us manipulate shapefiles.
Yep,
I don't have the ability, but
yep. No, I can, I'm just not very fast.
we'll use you on other things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just one example of looking and seeing what makes, like, what seems clear, like something we should work on, or what questions does it raise for you? And I'll be doing the same, but I'll be looking at those and the zoning, at least initially.
All right. Well, I'm excited to look at the master plan, not as an editor, because I've read it through a few times.
Yeah, I'd say.
But it's just a different, yeah. Yeah. And if you see any typos in the master plan, please don't tell me.
Keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
10 years, write
Yeah.
it down.
Moving on to implementation.
Yeah.
That'd be the long term.
So is it time to make a motion?
No.
No?
Not yet.
What else we got here?
Oh. At the discretion of the chair, any comments from our public?
I guess I have something maybe under unfinished and other
Oh,
business. Just a general question. So without getting specific, we've been out on some site walks for properties related to site plan review updates, amendments, or whatever. What does it take for us to revisit that if the situation seems to be worse than when we walked on the property? If it's a commercial use that doesn't look like it's complying with the site plan that we reviewed, does it take an abutter bringing it to our attention?
No, I mean, because if it comes to your attention, then it comes to your attention,
Right,
you know. How it gets there is,
okay,
it's just a way.
right,
But certainly, I mean, it would have to be, and it's a tangled process.
right,
You'd have to make the suggestion for the site walk at the meeting, and then it would have to be scheduled and posted, and, it becomes another meeting, even if it's earlier than we meet at 4 o'clock versus 6:30.
okay,
But then it would have to go through the normal planning board stuff where, it's raised and discussed, moved and seconded, and then scheduled.
okay.
Are you talking about like an infraction, like
Follow
not,
through,
yeah, like if they didn't follow through the,
Yeah, I'm talking about a property on a commercial highway here in town that several people have asked me about, and we went on a site walk there. And it seems, and now I'm a little bit more aware of it because I've been asked so many times. And so now I'm looking and saying, this seems worse than when we walked around. What's our responsibility, as a board who went and did that?
I think ours is, if people have a concern, it's just like the select board. If somebody runs into me at the store, we bring it to the meeting. Okay, if we've got a quick answer, we get back with them. If we don't, then we get a panel and we go take a look at it.
Right.
And I think that's what we need to do here.
And I think it's a great idea.
I mean, once it's approved, we're still responsible for making sure, that's majority of Brian's job.
Right, but I don't feel it's fair to Brian, because I feel like it's like a shared responsibility, and that's why I didn't go to Brian. I wanted to.
Brian
bring it up.
appreciates it.
Yeah, I hope so. I'm sure Brian gets enough of it. But just that, I think a lot of times we approve the site plan and we don't, as a board, think about it again. But we also live here, and so we're
Right.
seeing that sometimes these things aren't getting done.
what do you mean it's gotten worse? Like, that makes it sound like it was bad and now it's, is it?
Yeah, there were issues with vehicle storage and things and fire access around the building, and it looks to be worse than when we walked it.
I
One has
wonder
to be
what
careful in
site that could
discussing
be.
this.
That sounds like a clear cut.
Yes.
That needs to, that doesn't sound like there's a process. It's not, it sounds like there's a process, but the process is someone of official capacity has to go look at that.
But that official can also take comment from the governing board for that particular entity.
Right, but I think And I hate to say you, but I mean, it's the
Yeah,
building inspector.
anything
like,
that
it
that
sounds
was
like,
decided by the board would be implemented through me.
yeah.
And I think it's a wonderful idea, because it also carries extra weight over and above my opinion and assessment.
So you're saying an additional site walk and visit by the board to see if the conditions that were set forth in, or what's been
Yes.
set forth in the application, the site plan application, any conditions applied to their approval are being met to the board's satisfaction?
Correct.
That wasn't my initial thought, but
Yeah.
that, I would agree that that's one way to do it. I just know that having been on that site walk, and Brian was not staffing the board at the time, and we were actually encouraged to just go on the site walk on our own,
Yeah.
which I didn't feel was appropriate to the landowner or to members of the board.
Well,
So we
that's the
did have an
thing.
official, we had an official walk,
Yeah.
which was good.
I would have to check and see. I'm sure that the owner would be amenable. But in the case that they're not, I mean, nobody wants to host a party on their property that doesn't belong to them.
No, right.
Especially one with minutes.
You know,
Right.
it may come into other things. I'll check on the mechanism of that to see.
And hey, if we can go for a site walk and things are improved when we get there, all the better.
So I think it's interesting too, because the board has changed a little bit since this, and can this board get I mean, is there enough, the detail of do we have to look at their original site plan review and the notice of, decision to determine, okay, this is what they said they were gonna do?
You would have to go by the latest one,
Yep.
which we can do.
Could
Yeah.
we do that at an upcoming meeting? Like, could we, so that everyone gets to see the site plan? I
Yeah.
guess we have to put it on our agenda at that point,
Okay.
and then it's out there.
Yep. I guess my question is, what's the difference between having, I mean, is that turning this board into more of an enforcement board? You know, because we have the institutional knowledge, those of us that were on the board, to have gone to the site plan.
See your
So
point.
what if there's something from 5 years ago that's not adhering? We wouldn't know, we just happen to know this one, so
Right.
is it turning us into enforcers?
Only
Yeah.
if you're looking after your own business, then no. You know what I'm saying? So, but any citizen who was knowledgeable, say, could note the same thing that a board member did about this particular thing over here. You know, what's up with that?
Right.
You know, and then you either bring it back or you throw it in my lap. And, you know, so essentially you're vetting the implementation of your own site plan. And if that's not what you were presented, or it veered off at that point, then it kind of pushes it more towards me.
Yep.
And having specifics is very helpful for a guy like me.
And I just wanted to put it out there, and maybe everyone needs time to think about what the best way forward is. I'm not in a rush. But I felt I should raise it with all of you and not
You know,
just with one
and
of
certainly
you.
it doesn't have to be in this kind of manner. You know, the opportunity is there all the time for any ongoing project, for you guys to check how it's going. You know, I mean, you do kind of own it until the C of O is written, because it has to conform with what you had laid down for them also, as well as all the other regulations. So essentially, you know, it gives you familiarity with everything that's going on out there, but no, it doesn't mean that you're in charge of, that's the wrong spin on it, that you're bound to do anything, other than put it into the proper channels, which either be going through the select board or coming directly to me, if it was one of those types of situations.
No, I think this is a question that I have all the time when I see, not necessarily things that we've approved, but, you know, dumpsters that aren't
Things that
screened
don't
in
look
places and.
Right.
What do I even do?
Yeah, I
Like,
mean-
that needs, that.
And we've had to deal with, some of them have come to Brian's attention, and the select board has had to deal with the individuals, bring them in, and, you know, this is zoning, this is, you know, because somebody, you know, okay, right to the street is my property and da-da-da, and no, it's not, you know? And, you know, so lots of times it's an education, you know?
Right.
Okay, you're parked right there, you know, it's a safety hazard and everything else. And then we explain to them, you know, you can't be there and this is it. And then they know somebody's looking, so they fix the situation, but.
Which is the best outcome you could have.
Yeah, well, it is, and the best thing is not to make it public, it's just, you know, somebody saw it, you know, a neighbor can get with Brian, and, you know, nobody knows, you know, it could be anybody driving by that complained about it, you know?
Yep.
And then that way, everything stays civil, and we don't start a Hatfield and McCoy thing, and.
That's great by me, yeah.
Yeah, and we educate people, because a lot of people don't understand, you know, oh, the plow truck, you know, got 6 inches of my grass, you know, and, you know, well,
It happens.
They also plowed your road.
and we had a long one on that one, so.
How'd you get grass to go right to the edge of the road?
So, just for clarity here, because I know there's no I think if we have more details, maybe this would be easier to discuss, because I think we're a little blind here, but site plan review, we agree, all parties agreed to certain standards.
Correct.
I mean, if
It's a
the,
violation if they're not.
yeah, so, I mean, there's gotta be a pretty standard mechanism for follow-up on that, right? And is that not what we're talking about here? Or
Yeah.
are we, yeah, so.
Yeah, it's just how do
Many
you bring it
towns
forward?
don't
you
have,
know?
sorry, Steve.
No,
Many towns don't have an enforcement arm, and it devolves to the zoning assistant, the planning board, or essentially they have to develop that information. So, yes, it's entirely appropriate for you to follow up on your own work. You got it easy because you can do it and say, fix this for us. Not easy, but you know what I'm saying. You don't have to do that part of the work, but you can certainly do the follow-up and point out things that, you know, no, this is not right, or, you know, I thought we talked about this, you know, in general things, and certainly it's easier to do on a brand-new project, you know, because it hasn't hit the slump yet, for want of a better term. When it goes back on the other, yeah, you still have the site plan review, and it's expected to be followed, and you have the same authority as the Board of Selectmen in many, and more, in some instances, as far as the power that you can wield. So, you know, the only thing I would recommend on that is if the board decided to do something that could be perceived as a negative or even a positive, that they would bring it to the Board of Selectmen first, because they will be able to delegate the who's and where's.
I think this is good. Do you want to recommend anything in particular on this, or do you want to, in this specific case?
I'm not sure. I mean, I just want to make sure that the work that was done by the town gets followed for the benefit of abutters and everybody else. And so I felt that I should raise it with all of you so that,
I think it's good.
but if it can be addressed offline first and brought to the attention, I think that's great. And I think John's point, you know, a lot of times just saying, hey,
Right.
can we look at the site plan, or can you look at the site plan and make sure that you're in compliance? We'll give you a chance to do so. I think that's good. But if it doesn't happen, then I think we do need to do something or bring it up to the Board of
Right.
Selectmen
No, I
so they
think-
can.
And usually it all hinges, I always work on the informal stuff first. I send out love letters.
Yeah. I think I've received one. So,
Okay.
you know.
And, you know, it's just generally, hey, you know, it's come to our attention, let's fix
You might need
this.
a permit.
Yeah.
And then
When people
if
want to
they don't
complain,
understand
they go
it,
to the
you know,
board.
they get with him and they get the
Just helpful.
clarity, and probably 9 times out of 10, it fixes it, because
Yep.
you're in violation, you can be fined, your choice. And, you know.
Love Brian.
But, you know, when they get the formal notice, that's when they get upset.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to be done about that, because I always ask for input. Yeah, please call me, let's talk about this, let's do it, we can straighten this out, and it'll all go away. Unless you don't, in which case, then when the thing comes, then it's suddenly they're under the gun, and, you know, they want to go over my head, and it rarely happens. Well, they go over my head, but the board generally supports me, because, like John said, are you in violation or not? You know, it's binary. So,
And there's no kinda, you know?
you know, as far as how do you get to that point, there's all kinds of ways to do it.
Okay.
Formally, informally. Informal stuff has already been started in that particular case,
Okay, good.
at least conversationally.
So maybe if it hits a sticking point and we can be of use to
Yes.
review the site plan, maybe that's the best way to proceed.
Right.
And then if we get in a situation where we need to tell the select board that things are not in accordance with site plan, that gives us.
And Brian, I mean, that's probably a lot of his work is dealing, I mean, people see him, they know his job, and they say, hey, I got this problem. Or somebody comes to me, I go to Brian, and Brian looks into it, and sometimes Brian will deal direct with them, or he'll get back with me, and then I'll get back with the citizen,
Okay.
you know, to let them know, you know, so.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm available to the planning board in the same capacity as I am to the Board of Selectmen,
Right,
if you ask me to.
right.
But, you know, and once that happens, though, it's going to have to go according to my rule book and not the planning board rule book, other than site plan regs. You know, if they were looking at it through that lens, then that would be the thing. But then it becomes, you know, like I was saying, if you say, hey, you know, we'd like to check on how you're doing, and they say, hey, there's absolutely no way you're getting on my property, I can always get an administrative warrant. Because it's obvious from the public way what's going on. That's where I do most of my work, is just spying on people. No, but for lack of a better term, you know,
They call
anything
it-
that you
they
can
call it
see from the
drive-bys.
street or a sidewalk is public way.
Right.
And that includes looking over your fence into your neighbor's yard. That's also the public way. So as long as we all respect that, and I'm not talking to the board in that, but I mean the population in general, then there aren't really issues. But if there's something that needs to be compelled to be done, we do have the authority to do that. It's convoluted, and nobody really likes to go down that road, because it, you know, borders on the real deal as far as legal action. But it's available. I haven't had to resort to that, because John said 90% of the time. It's greater than that. It's more like 98.
Well, let's hope that's the
Yeah,
case.
that's
Yeah.
great. All right, does that cover it for you?
Yeah.
That's good, thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
I've had my eye on that as well, so, yeah. But I didn't have an outlet for that, so it's.
Well, and I wasn't sure either, so I figured better to do it here with all of you and just see how you want to proceed.
I did remember one more thing, that we're gonna do other board updates on work sessions as well. So I think we don't have Jack, so nothing from the ZBA, but anything from the Conservation Commission or Select Board that needs to be brought to.
Other than, I presented the idea that we come up with like a plan or a vision for public access to that corridor on the Baker River, so the next time we have a developer here, I can give specifics, rather than just say, well, we this, you know. I think we need a specific vision, so we're working on that.
Great.
Select board, really not a whole lot. Right now, we're working on the budget, getting ready for budget hearings, and we've got all administrative matters, and
It's enough.
hmm?
It's enough.
Yeah,
I can speak for the zoning board.
This
okay.
time of year.
There haven't been a lot of cases lately. We do have one for this month. It's addition of a dwelling unit to a three dwelling unit building. No, it will all be within the footprint. Basically, they're taking one apartment and cutting it in half. That's where my question about open space development came in.
Oh, interesting.
So this is at Fairgrounds Farms. It's the original farmhouse up there. It's appropriately zoned, it has appropriate everything, but because it's part of the open space development, I had to read into those regs. And it turns out that if it's another weird number, it's like 20% of the smallest parcel allowed is what you set your dwelling unit size at. So it turns out that they make it through. I mean, it was almost like, they found a loophole, but there wasn't really a loophole there. It was just the way it was written around it. It pretty much respects the original property, but as long as it doesn't go beyond, because it is part of the open space now, that, they have to conform to those rules. There's always one more that you have to find out, the fine print. But that's just one case for this month, and it turns out the only abutter is himself. So
he might come speak in favor of it.
he might, but you never know.
Yeah. Great.
Your turn.
Is it me? I move that we adjourn this meeting and
I will second that.
All right, all those in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
Aye. All right, meeting is adjourned.